Good evening. First, we have some open meeting information that we need to have everyone understand. So the preliminary matter, this is a public hearing of the tree warden, and I, Tim Lamprey, am the tree warden. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. There are no members. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Susan Noyes?
Yes.
Okay. Anticipated speakers on the agenda. There were no anticipated speakers. I presume that there'll be more speakers, but they're not on the agenda, so we will say none. Good evening. Today is July 29, 2020, 7 p.m., and this is an open meeting of the tree warden, which is being conducted remotely, consistent with the Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the Corona-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials to the meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable. Public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the tree warden is convening by telephone conference and video conference being via Zoom, as posted on the agenda of the tree warden section of the town's website, identifying how the public may join. You may join us by going to http://zoom.us and enter meeting ID 847-4624-1052, followed by the password 538115, or by calling 929-205-6099, entering meeting ID 847-4624-1052, and if prompted, enter the password 538115. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference. The next thing to consider would be meeting materials, and there aren't materials that we're passing out per se. Okay, we are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the tree warden, will introduce each item on the agenda. As an attendee, we ask that you participate, keeping in mind the following. Please remember to mute your phone, which would be *6 to toggle mute and unmute, or computer, the mute button, when you are not speaking. Please use earbuds, earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps to generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast will be captured by the recording. Please wait until the tree warden yields the floor to you and state your name and address before speaking. Public comments. After I, the tree warden, have finished presenting the information with regard to a particular area and or tree, I will then afford the public comment as follows. I will seek questions through the raised hand function. For video conference participants, the function can be accessed by clicking on the participants option listed in the menu below the photo gallery. Hover your cursor in this area if you don't see it. Window will open and display is on the right. On the bottom of this participant area, you will see a list of phone video participants And on the bottom, you will see the ability to click on a button to raise hand. Please ensure your name is displayed. You may rename by using the More function next to your name. List your name, address, and then your question. Telephone participants can use the phone keypads while in a Zoom meeting to raise hands by hitting *9. I will seek to call upon questions from the public that have hit the raised hand button in order in which they are listed. The system lists them in the order of who first hit the raise button hand function. Excuse me. Please identify your name and address, and then your question or comments. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor to your questions. We will continue down the list of those in the raised hand column. Should there be a physical or electronic submittal of question or concerns that were received, they will be read for the record at this time. Additional agenda items will be called upon and handled in the same manner. So with that in mind, what I have to do is read the legal notice that was posted in the areas of the trees. Town of Newbury Tree Warden Public Hearing Notice. Residents of the town of Newbury and other interested persons, please note that on Wednesday, July 29th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the second floor hearing room at 12 Kent Way, Byfield, Mass, to be held virtually via Zoom. Residents of the town or other interested parties are invited to participate in the hearing from their computer, tablet, or smartphone by using the following links. https // the number 0, the number 2, web.zoom.us/J84746241052 and enter the password 538115. The public can also participate via telephone by calling 1-929-205-6099 and using meeting ID 847-4624-1052 and enter the password 538115. The Newbury Tree Warden will hold a public hearing in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 87, Section 3, on the trimming or removal of the following shade trees, all of which have this posted adhered to thereto. I always have trouble with that one. To prune dead and damaged limbs on all town-owned trees on both the upper green and the lower green. Each tree at that time will be assessed for overall health, and any trees deemed in need of removal will be scheduled for an additional public hearing to be scheduled at a later date. Okay. Next would be Larkin Road, a 30-inch oak tree opposite pole number 4-50, marked with an orange X on the trunk. Next one will be near number 2 Cottage Road, 5 maple trees of various sizes located between pole number 14 and pole number 2, marked with an orange X on each trunk. So let us start with the upper and the lower green. There was a committee formed a while back, and they were looking at what should be done with the upper and the lower greens. And one of the first things that I think we need to do is get in there, assess what's going on, prune out any dead wood, any branches, and there's a number of them where branches have snapped off and the branches then have an open, call it wound, on there, so that those would need to be pruned out. At that point, each tree will be looked at and a determination will be made as to whether or not that tree would need to just be left alone, probably fertilized in the future, and then just monitored, or if there's something that's seen in the process of pruning it out, hollowed out tree, something like that, then there'll be a public hearing on each particular tree that may have to come down. And that would be on both the upper and the lower green. That will take place once everything comes together for the meeting. We'll come together after the meeting for any pruning that is needed on those trees. So at this point, is there any discussion on the pruning of trees on the upper and the lower green?
I am not seeing any raised hands at this moment. Oh, okay, hold on. She's not using the raised hand function.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Sorry,
There you go, Michelle.
sorry about that. I didn't see the button at the very bottom there.
No worries.
Just a quick question for clarification on that. Is this related at all to the committee that's looking at the sort of overall improvement of the upper green in relation to the pond and all the rest of that? Is that what's prompting this right now? I'm just curious.
Well, it was something that I'd been looking at for probably 2 years prior to the committee getting together. And I actually sat in on a lot of those meetings and brought to their attention the issues about some of the trees on the upper green, but the lower green. So the committee said, well, let's make that part of what we're going to do, is to find out what the issue was with the trees.
Okay.
Their recommendation was that if we had to replace any trees, we came up with a list of native trees that replace the existing sugar maples that are there. The sugar maples have taken a beating in southern New England for a long time. A couple of reasons, one being road salt, the other being, believe it or not, it's not cold enough in the winter for them.
Oh yeah, I know.
They suffer through that severely. So we didn't have really a good idea of what to do, but I think doing the pruning on the town-owned trees, there's a few out near High Road that we're still working on, trying to find out if those are state trees or whether they're town trees. Interestingly enough, anything that's directly abutting High Road or any trees that are abutting, call it the right-of-way on Route 1 or High Road, are governed by Mass DOT. It's not town trees, so to speak.
Right.
So that's what we have to figure out on those trees. And then they're still doing some construction up at the corner of Parker and High Road, which might be a little difficult to initially get in there and check on those trees. But it is something that the town can do now that we have the bucket truck to do it.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a couple of more, so I'm going to unmute the next person.
Okay.
Okay, whoops, I'm sorry. Jessica Brown.
Thanks. Hi, good evening. Jessica Brown at 275 High Road. Quick question about a couple of the trees on the lower green. And first of all, Tim, I do want to say that I've heard a great deal of appreciation and mentioned it in my letter to you for your efforts to ensure the health of the trees at the southern part of the lower green when there was the issue with the vehicle parking and so on. And so thank you for all you've done to help save those trees. I noticed at least 2 trees on the lower green that look to me like they do need pruning and they don't have notices on them. And I just wondered about that. There's one at the corner, right at the corner of Newman Road and the dirt road that looks, and it's just so strange to see healthy trees with notices on them and then these other trees not having notices on them.
Because it says all trees on the, and all trees on the lower green, town-owned trees. Again, that's the issue. Looking at some of those trees that are close to High Road, we have to get a determination from Mass DOT that their tree or the town of Newbury's tree. Honestly, I think that if the town wants to prune them, there's probably not going to be a major issue from the state, but we still have to get permission to do that. On the upper green, I think there's 2 that might be state-owned trees, but everything else is town trees. So the initial idea was to just do the upper green as part of the upper green advisory committee. But I said, well, if we're doing this, the lower green is going to come into question at some point in time. So let's look at those trees. Some of the pines that are up there have a lot of dead wood, and there is one on Newman Road that's really in bad shape. I don't know what we're going to do. That one may seriously be to the point that once they start trimming it up, they may find that hollow. And there's a lot of trees in town, just as a general information thing, that have problems with the entire inside of the tree being hollowed out. We had one on Larkin Road. It was an oak tree, and when I looked at it, there was a big hole in the bottom, and the tree looked good, but obviously it had severe issues. And when it was cut down, 75 to 80% of the actual interior of the tree was just gone from rot and decay. So that's what we're trying to figure out. Okay, do we have
Thank
any?
you for the clarification. I didn't know that if it didn't have a notice, it still might be you might be working on it. So
No,
now I understand.
Whichever ones are, call it town trees.
Okay, I have Glenna Etheridge that I'm going to unmute that has a question here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, Glenna Etheridge, 6 Newman Road. I wanted sort of a general question on the process. Who is responsible if when you go and look at a tree? Do you, Tim, as the tree warden, make the decision that this tree needs trimming or whatever, and who does the work? Is it town DPW, or do you hire people, or how does that work?
Okay.
How does the process work, please?
In the case of the upper and the lower green, it's going to be all the trees, the town trees will be looked at. So if the truck comes in, I think most everything will be accessible through the bucket truck that the town of Newbury now has. So they would be doing the work on pruning up the trees, looking at them. I think it'll be set up that if they run into something, the highway people will give me a call and say, okay, can you come down and, take a look at this particular tree? Because right now we don't really know much of anything about the trees as far as the health of them on the upper and the lower green. Most everything in the past was done reactively. A branch would break off and fall, and then in some cases it was never cut flush or anything was done to it, and there may be some rot going into it. With trees in general in town, sometimes I spot them. I spend more time driving around town looking up when I'm driving and seeing things. Other times people call, leave a message at town hall. They ask me to go out and look, and I will go out and look at the tree. And the vast majority of the time when people call, it's because the tree is really in sad shape. Some of them are absolutely dead. Go back a few years, it was probably some of the first trees that I looked at. I got a call from someone on Main Street, and she said, I have a tree that doesn't look good. Well, when I got there, it was an oak tree. It was probably about 120 feet tall, and it was dead. I mean, there wasn't a leaf on the tree. And directly across the street from it was another oak tree that was probably 75 feet tall. And then about 150 feet up the street, there was another oak tree that was dead. So generally, if I'm in a neighborhood, like I got a call for a tree further down on Larkin Road. And as I was driving back up Larkin Road, I noticed a lot of trees that had issues, so I put those in for a public hearing. As far as the trees, who takes them down, if it's accessible to our bucket truck, in other words, I think ours will reach 90 feet, if I remember correctly, or 95 feet. If it's in a location that's very difficult for them to get to, like there was a couple that we've had to deal with that were directly behind a telephone pole. And it makes it very difficult to get in there and work. You actually need a crane to do that. If it's something that the town's equipment cannot handle, then we have to go out to bid. We have to get 3 bids from independent contractors. They're all based on what's known as prevailing wage, which prevailing wage is essentially what is, call it union scale in Boston. And the last time I checked, it was bucket truck and A-man was $2.75 an hour. So you can have a tree that if the town could take it down, it might work out to be, say, $800 versus $2,000 or $3,000 doing it under the bidding process. So it's seldom now that we have to get someone to come in with a crane and do anything. I don't think there'd be anything on the green that would require a crane if we, had to take it down. So it should be anything there that would have to be removed, then the town could do it. Anything that they're not comfortable doing because of high tension wires in the area, things like that, then we would have to go out to bid. And like I said, that's 3 bids. The bids come in, the low bidder would get the contract. They have to provide insurance waivers to the town saying, yes, we have workman's comp. Yes, we have, what do I want to say? Liability insurance. And all of that has to be done and submitted to the town before the final bid is awarded on that. So basically, now that we have the bucket truck, most of the stuff can be done by the highway department. The guys have gone through a training course on how to, use the equipment. We've gotten better at it as time goes along. And so they've been able to keep up with it. It's worked out well because on occasion, down behind the marina on the Parker River, there was a tree on one of the side streets there, a limb broke. And this was before the bucket truck. And so we had to go out and get an emergency down to that limb because it was hanging. And because it was taken down minimum of 4 hours, a limb was $2,000 to remove it. And it's like, that's ridiculous. So that's when I started talking about getting the truck. And over time, the payback is going to be a very short period of time, and what we're saving on not having to put it out to bid.
And in terms of if a tree needs to be taken down, who makes that decision? Is it the DPW guys? Are they looking and saying, making a recommendation that this tree is dead, it needs to come down, or and what's
if it was on the green, under Massachusetts state law, the only person who can order a tree taken down for a public hearing is the tree warden. So, someone couldn't look at a tree and say, oh, that tree out by the road, that doesn't look good. I'm going out there this afternoon with my chainsaw and cut it down. No. So the tree warden ultimately makes the decision on the tree whether or not it would need to come down in the tree warden's opinion. However, that's why we have these public hearings, because people need to know what's going on. The vast majority of the time when a public hearing is set up, I've had some public hearings where there's been a bunch of different trees in different areas and no one shows up to the meeting. It's a very quick meeting. But when there are concerns, people will show up, before pre-COVID, people would show up at the meetings at town hall and explain what their question was about a particular tree. In some cases, people would say, oh, well, that tree is down the street from me, but there's another one further down or further back up at whatever. Then I would go out and look at that, schedule that for the next public hearing and do it that way. The only exception to that is if you have a tree that, I think the correct wording is imminent danger of falling. In other words, you have a dead tree that has been on a certain street, and straight line winds come in or something, thunderstorm, ice storm, and that tree is starting to really lean and be a threat to people, then the tree warden can order it to be immediately cut down. It's a safety reason. You don't want to come in somebody's car, on a school bus, on anything. So it's very seldom that we have had to use that type of a situation where imminently dangerous trees are just ordered to be cut down. The public hearings are required by state law, and that's the reason why we do it, so that we can get feedback from people. If there's questions about a particular tree, why are you taking that down? There is also, call it an appeal process. Say there's a tree out in front of your house, I look at it and say, gee, that really should come down. You think, I don't think it should come down. I have, for later on in the meeting, 18 emails that I've received on Cottage Road. So what that does at that point is that triggers a public hearing with the Board of Selectmen, who then will ultimately make the decision as to whether the trees that I have, call it, selected for removal will actually come down. So if no one objects, then basically the tree would come down, or the tree would be pruned for that matter. Because pruning, you have to have a public hearing on that too. That's the reason for the public hearing on the upper and the lower green, so that people know what's going on with it.
That answer your question, Glenna?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, we've got one more, Tim, from a Lynette Lika. I'm going to open that up for her.
Okay, thank you. There's been a question in the back of my mind, and maybe this is an appropriate time to ask it. When a tree is either pruned or removed, if there's marketable wood in the remains or in what's taken down, does someone benefit from that?
Well, the majority of the time what happens is there's so many people in town who have wood stoves. And so they'll be cutting a tree, and people will come up and go, oh, can I have that? And a lot of times it's neighbors, and they will then take the wood and cut it up into wood stove sizes. For the most part, when a tree is taken down, there's not what I would say would be marketable lumber. And I don't know, I suppose there's a way of doing that, but I have no idea if it would be more than just, what term do I want to use? Would it be more of a nuisance than a benefit to the town to, have the lumber taken, have the wood taken someplace to be cut up in lumber, and then does the person who cuts it up from lumber want to give it back to the town as 2x4s or 2x6s, and then what does the town do with it? It's not like they're going to use it in construction. So the vast majority of them, smaller branches would be chipped up, and then larger pieces. Generally speaking, I've yet to see a case where once the highway department starts cutting down a tree, pretty much anywhere in town, that somebody doesn't say, oh, I'll take that. And then that just saves any kind of, say, like a disposal fee for having to get rid of the wood. It's also difficult in that because of emerald ash borer and a lot of other insects, Massachusetts tries to keep, say, cut down trees in a particular county. In other words, if there was something that might have an insect issue, then generally it stays in Essex County. So, but like I said, 99% of the time, if a tree is coming down, somebody in the neighborhood wants it. Yeah.
But it's not marketed for firewood?
I don't know how we would do that. You know,
Okay.
you'd have to have a bidding process, and then that would require, you know, storage of the wood somewhere.
Okay.
I brought that up years ago, if it could be done someplace where the town might gain something from it.
Mhm.
The response didn't seem to be positive on it. If you think about, if you have a wood stove in your house and you get a load of firewood, somebody brings it in, then somebody would have to stack it up for you. And the cost on it, I think, would be prohibitive of what you get.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks for the information.
Okay, it looks like we are all clear there. If you wanted to move on, Tim?
Okay. The next one would be a tree on Larkin Road. It's a 30-inch oak opposite pole number 4-5, marked with an orange X on the trunk. If you're familiar with Larkin Road, it is very narrow at the beginning of the road. And there were a number of trees at that end of Larkin Road that were in danger of falling. And this one was the last of the group. We thought that the guys from the highway department would be able to get to it, but it's situated in a way that they're not going to be able to get it. So this is one that we're going to have to put out to bid to get the tree taken down. So is there any questions on that particular tree?
I am seeing none.
Okay, we can wait just a few more seconds to see if anybody pops in. If they don't, in a few minutes, then we'll go on to the next one. Okay, seeing no hands, then we'll go on to near number 2 Cottage Road, 5 maples, trees of various sizes, located between pole number 14 and pole number 2, marked with an orange X on each trunk. There have been, unless something else has come up on my phone in the last few minutes, 18 emails that I have received that I will read into, call it the minutes for want of a better term, of people opposed to the removal of the trees. I'm going to give you a little bit of history on that. About 3 years ago, in that area where there are the 5 trees, there were, I believe, 7 trees altogether. And I'd been contacted about some of the trees that were up near the upper end, closest to High Road, that limbs were dropping, and it was, those trees were in a school bus area where the school buses would pick kids up, and people were afraid that the kids were going to get hurt. So went down, took a look at those 2 trees that were in question. At that time, I looked at the other 5 that were there. And like I said, that was 3 years ago. The 2, as I remember, one of them we had to take down. It was literally just dead. And then there's another one, which would be the second one in from the left as you're looking at all those trees, that was limbed up. At that point, we were using private contractors, and one of them said to me, you know, you're going to have to keep an eye on those other trees because there are issues on them. And over the last 3 years, I would drive by and look at the trees and see what the conditions were on them, and realizing that there were some issues starting to come up with them. So I had gotten a call to come and take a look at the trees and see what kind of condition the trees were in. And once the trees were marked, then there were some objections to it. I did take some photographs that maybe we can bring up on the screen, and then I can point out things on those photographs. So, what's that?
Yeah, I can do that. If just give me a minute, I'm gonna share
Yep.
my screen.
Yep.
Does everybody see that?
Nope, it's not coming up on mine.
Okay. Says I'm sharing, so. Hold on one moment. Interesting. And it does not like it. Can anybody see anything that's up right now?
I see the pictures that are there.
Okay. Can everybody else see them?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, do you want to go through that, Tim? This what in this format?
Yeah, we can do that. Okay, the one that is the first one, there's two side by side right there. That I believe is, I can't remember if that's the second or the third tree down on the left, but I had called Mr. DePiero and asked if I could go and get some pictures on the, call it the reverse side of the trees, so that I would know what they looked at all the way around. In many instances, the trees look fine from the front, but there's issues with the back. So if you look at the first one that's marked CR1, if you're familiar with how trees will grow, sometimes you'll get a tree that'll start to grow and it'll have two branches that are growing side by side, and as the branches grow up, those then become the trunk of the tree. And if you can look at that one, you'll see on what would be the right-hand side, one part of that has rotted away, and the rot is extending into the other part of the tree that you would see from the road. If you go to the one marked CR2, you can see where down the lower part, the rot is starting to corrode away things. And then there's a split that goes right up through the center of the tree. That's the one that has been dropping a lot of branches. CR3 is one of the trees further down. I couldn't get a good picture because most all of that's poison ivy. But at about 5 o'clock on the photo, it's hard to see, but there is an area of rot that extensively goes into the trunk of that tree, and that's an issue. CR4, if you look at that, there is a hole in that tree where there's rot that's extending right into the center of the tree. It's all soft going in there. That is the same as what you're seeing in CR5. So if you look at it from the front of that, I believe that's the one that has the clam flat posting on it. CR6 is just some of the branches on one of the trees that is, they're just breaking off and falling, branches dying back onto the trees. If we scroll up a little bit, Susan, the one that's marked CR7, those were branches that had fallen off of one of the trees just after the thunderstorms we had, what was it, about 5 days ago, 6 days ago. CR8 is, again, an issue with rot in the center. You can see that the one branch has rotted away and the other one has the split in the center. CR9 if you look, there's a big knot hole in there where it's all rotted away into the center of the tree. And CR10, which is the final one, is just a picture of the trees, which from a distance, they all look good. They all have some degree of issue with rot in them. That's why I put them on the list to be removed, which again, that's brought up a lot of people who have sent in emails to me, which I will read those into the record. Some of the people who were here for the virtual meeting have already sent me emails, so I'll start reading those. It'll take a few minutes because, like I said, there's 18 of them. They've come in different times, but I will start with them. I'm sorry if I mispronounce anybody's last name. I'll do my best on it. The first one I've got is from Lizzie Protopopoulos. I think I've pronounced that right. Protopappas. Dear Mr. Lamprey, my name is Lizzie Protopopoulos, and I'm a junior. I'm going to be a junior at Triton High School. I live on Cottage Road and have lived there my whole life. When the property at 277 High Road got torn up to be developed, the character of the beginning of Cottage Road changed and will continue to change as construction begins. The only thing that separates the coming developments from the street are the trees along the road. These trees act as a sort of barrier to the up and coming neighborhood, but they also hold the old New England look, which is being altered by the new developments. They also act as a post where the clam flat closings are posted. Since my bus stop is right where the trees are, it's very important to me that they stay up so that at least some of the way that the street used to look is preserved since so much is changing. Please consider keeping the trees up since so much has already been taken down. Lizzie brings up a point, which is that the tree warden does not have any authority under state law on what goes on, call it private property. When a development goes in, that usually goes before the planning board, conservation commission. On private property, that would be who would make decisions on removal of trees. I've had people call and say, oh, I've got a tree here, can you come take it down? And then I go and look at the tree and it's 35 feet off the road. That becomes their tree and the person's responsible for it. The next one is from Catherine Gibbs. Dear Tim, I can only echo my support of the thoughts expressed in the letter to you from Jessica Brown of High Road in Newbury. I hope you will determine that the trees are healthy and can continue to live on Cottage Road. They are just beautiful and offer so much for all who live on the road, as well as all who walk, rollerblade, bike, and just enjoy the shade and beauty of the area. I will be attending tonight's Zoom meeting. Next one is from Sarah Siemens. She and John live at 258 High Road. Good afternoon, Tim. I wanted to let you know that as residents of High Road and Lower Green, we don't feel that the trees along Cottage Road should be cut down. They provide a buffer from the new construction and continue the look of the lane that Cottage Road is. The lane, the word lane is in, call it hash marks. One of the trees doesn't look as healthy as the others, but I think the others can stay. It's hard when the divider is gone, which happened on Newman Road as well. Next one is from Jessica Brown. I don't know if I have an address, might be in the body of this. Following messages from other members of our household at 275 High Road, I am writing in advance of the mandatory hearing regarding the trees on Cottage Road between poles 14 and pole 2. I wish to register my objections to the removal of any of these trees, which are on town land and have long provided shade along Cottage Road. They are part of the heritage landscape of this part of Newbury. I understand from the notice that this evening's meeting is being held prior to either pruning or removal of trees, and that during pruning, each tree at that time will be assessed for overall health, and any tree deemed in need of removal will be scheduled for an additional public hearing to be scheduled at a later date. That part right there applies just to what we talked about earlier, the trees on the upper and lower green. It won't be removal of trees on upper lower green. It'll be pruning and then assessing the trees, and then you have to come down at a later date. So that's a misunderstanding and probably just the wording of the legal notice. These trees appear to be healthy and not in need of removal, and an observation that was recently confirmed by an expert at the Arboretum. I imagine that you've heard or will be hearing from others in the neighborhood who are similarly concerned about the loss of these trees. They may have noted their importance to provide shade and habitat for local wildlife and as part of the scenery that they enjoy, either as a view from their homes or while walking or biking on Cottage Road. We have lived at this address at the corner of Cottage Road for 25 years and can attest to the many ways in which local residents enjoy the scenery along the road. This includes local school children who use the bus stop at the corner. To that list of important functions, let me add a few more of increasingly urgent importance. The trees are part of the slender remaining visual and physical buffer between the road and the activities currently taking place on the privately owned land currently under development. Their roots help to stabilize the soil, a function that has been made more critical following the recent removal of many mature trees from the property. Tree and stump removal and now excavation have completely removed the topsoil and ground cover on this property, leading to an increase in airborne dust, a growing disturbance for our family and other neighbors, and increasingly a respiratory health concern, all the more so during this time of the coronavirus pandemic. Like others living near the Lower Green and elsewhere in Newbury, I am appreciative of the efforts you have made as tree warden to ensure the health of the trees on the Lower Green, in particular the maples on the southern part of the green whose roots are being damaged by parked vehicles a few years ago. It is my hope and expectations that you will bring a similar sense of responsibility for these trees along Cottage Road, which are no less a part of what remains of Newbury's heritage and rural landscape. Regards, Jessica Brown. The next one is from Richard W. Johnson, Irene M. Johnson at 1 Riverfront, and Sarah Ward at 12 Riverfront. We question the use of taxpayers' money to remove what appears to be 4 healthy trees on Cottage Road. Admittedly, the 5th one appears near the end of its time. The developer of the adjacent land has recently removed many trees to make way for the housing development use planning. Who is to benefit from the removal of these trees, residents of Newbury or the developer? The quick answer to that would be that I look at it from a public safety perspective. Regardless of who the abutter is, I don't get to pick and choose whether it's someone that I might like or dislike. I just look at the trees and say, okay, are these trees safe, and are they going to be a danger to the public down the road? So the next one is from Amy Badger Bowditch, I believe. Dear Mr. Lamprey, I ask that you do not consider these trees, marked trees, to be removed. The area has already been stripped of all old growth trees and vegetation, and now looks like a landing strip. Allow the neighbors and abutters some semblance of visual screen from the new development. Already an enormous impact on the neighborhood. Please don't allow any further town trees to be sacrificed to this development. Thank you for your consideration of this very sensitive area and issue. Next one is from Brent Mitchell, and let's see if we've got an address on. No, I don't have an address on there. Maybe it's, yeah, it's in the body of the letter. Dear Tim, I have appreciated your gardening advice over the years. You seem to be bringing that expertise to the job of tree warden. I'm writing in advance of the mandatory hearing regarding the trees on Cottage Road between poles 14 and poles 2. I live at 175 High Road on the corner of Cottage and thus directly adjacent. Though the 5 trees in questions may require some pruning due to the utility lines, these trees are healthy and do not need to be removed. My amateur assessment has been confirmed by an expert from the Arboretum. These trees provide service as shade and habitat, albeit a factor of what had been in the area until recently. We are noticing more birds at our feeders, presumably because they have been displaced from across the street. In addition to retaining the existing trees, I would encourage the town to undertake a restoration of trees the length of the verge along the way to the cemetery. This would help to mitigate some of the recent loss of many trees on private land, I would be willing to participate in such an initiative and would like to follow up with you after the hearing. I hope you will find that the maple trees can be professionally pruned but should not be removed. It is trees like these with the old stone walls at their base that remind all who pass that we live in Newbury and not Newton. Regards, Brent Mitchell. Let's see, next one is from Alex C. McArdle at 61 Boston Road. I add my voice to those against cutting down the large trees on Cottage Road. There are overhanging branches on the developer's land. They should be limbed appropriately, but to remove entire trees is way too much. Please do not let the trees be cleared. I also say that I think the red scarlet letters are offensive. To answer that, the orange markings are put up there to show which trees would be considered to be removed. If it was a blue marking, that would say that the trees were going to be pruned. That's what those markings are for. Next one is from John Protopappas. Let's see. Dear Mr. Lamprey, I hope you are safe and sane. I'm emailing about the proposal of discussion about cutting the large trees down at the top of Cottage Roads in front of 277 High Road. I'm 100% against removal of any trees that are healthy. Our street in town has been forever changed for the development, and these trees are one of the only things that can remind us of how it used to be. To give in to the request to remove these trees would be a complete disservice to the residents of Cottage Road. I was there for all the hearings trying to prevent the development and understand the board has no tools to prevent it from moving forward. That is not the case here. Those are our trees and we want them to stay. One of the trees has given notice for over 25 years about whether the clam flats are open or not. While this may seem like an insignificant thing to some, to me, it's one of the things that makes Cottage Road the special place it is. Please do not allow the removal of these trees to appease the developer. His needs are not ours, and we need to hold on to any sense of how it is to be used, any sense of how it used to be that we can. And he lives at 64 Cottage Road. Next one is Stephen Bowditch at 42B Cottage Road. Sir, I am a resident and property owner at 42B Cottage Road and pass by these trees nearly every day, always admiring their overall health and beauty, and would be sorely disappointed to see them removed simply for gain. These are healthy living records of the history of Newbury. That being the case, and if no life, limb, or liberty is being encroached upon unduly, would lodge my vote to keep these healthy and vibrant specimens as a town resource rather than a nuisance, which the developer may be seeing it as is. I'd refer back to the pictures that we had earlier on that. Next one is from Allie Fields at 38 Cottage Road. Dear Tim, thank you for your work that you've been doing in Newbury for the trees. I'm a resident of Cottage Road, and I'm so sad that these big, beautiful trees might be taken down. Every time I drive or run past these lots, I just can't believe that all those trees were cut down. Our earth needs trees. I understand that if trees are dead or limbs are dangerous, they may need to be removed, but the majority of these trees seem fine, so I don't understand why we take them down. Let's see, next one, Michelle. It might be Ogeria, A-U-G-E-R-I. Again, I apologize if I massacred your last name. Dear Mr. Lamprey and the Board of Selectmen, I'm writing to voice my strong opposition to the destruction of 4 of the 5 trees currently marked for removal on Cottage Road and the subject of a virtual public hearing on Wednesday, the 29th at 7 p.m. While I must admit the first tree in line is in decline and would be reasonable to remove, the other 4 appear to be in decent shape and in no danger to anyone, disease and public danger being the criteria for removal of a public tree. These trees are harming no one, but instead are providing shade and oxygen and a natural visual buffer to what's going on at the end of the street. As public trees, they belong to all of us, and I believe they should be allowed to go on standing. In addition to clearing most of the vegetation from his new property, the current owner at 277 High Road had to be stopped from clearing trees and shrubs on the public land abutting the property by a Cottage Road resident who called the police and the tree warden after witnessing the cutting. He informed her at the time that he would get to do whatever he wanted eventually. On that particular thing, they were not cutting trees, they were cutting back poison ivy and things like that, which when I went, I told him, I said, you know, that's public property. You can't be, even call it mowing the grass if you want along that area, which he then did stop. Various comments made by the current owner of 277 High Road suggest that now he wants all 5 trees cut down and removed. And since they are on town property, not his, the removal requires a public hearing of the tree warden. Trees on town property are usually removed because they are deemed dead, diseased, or decrepit and a danger to humans in the public way. At least 4 of the 5 marked trees on Cottage Road do not appear to meet these criteria and would likely not be on the town's agenda for removal if it had not been requested by the current owner at 277 High Road. These trees are valued by those who have lived on Cottage Road for years and are part of the neighborhood's public property. They are not impeding anyone or anything and are not endangering anyone. Just because a person who intends to resell his property as soon as possible does not like them, is not a legitimate or legal reason to remove them. If you as tree warden or Newbury Board of Selectmen decide these trees need to come down, I will demand evidence of why they are considered a risk to the public. Please do not agree to remove the 4 obviously healthy trees. And that's Michelle, again, I believe it's Ogeria at 30 Cottage Road. Next is James Kennedy. Does not say where he lives. Hi, Tim. I've heard that there are plans to take the beautiful trees down on the entrance to Cottage Road. I would like to put in my vote to retain the trees for their age and aesthetic beauty. I feel they truly define the entrance to my home, and removing them would greatly diminish the appearance of the road. Thank you very much for your consideration, James Kennedy. Next one is from Carrie Gray, who lives at 21 Cottage Road. I write you from 21 Cottage Road as a neighbor to 277 High Road who has been deeply saddened and negatively affected by the mass destruction of the land hundreds of trees cut down that was purchased recently. It has come to our attention there are 5 large trees along the edge of the former Barton property near the Lower Green, which currently have large orange X's on them, and they are clearly marked for removal. However, they are on town land, and we understand this requires a public hearing with you. I don't have the words to articulate how much we oppose the removal of these trees. My family and I moved here thinking Newbury to be a place that protected green space and valued agriculture and history. The treatment of this historical agricultural landmark has been horrifying to us. The removal of so many trees that were potentially some of the oldest, if not the oldest in the town, was simply remarkable. The entire project was so destructive to the ecosystem, homes downhill from the land and the conservation corridor, that we must act to save but a few of these trees, if that is all we are permitted to defend. Mass General Law, Chapter 87, Section 4 states the tree warden shall not cut down or remove or grant a permit for the cutting down or removal of a public shade tree if at or before a public hearing as provided in the preceding section, objection in writing is made by 1 or more persons, unless such cutting or removal or permit to cut or removal is approved by the selectman or by the mayor. Thank you for speaking for us, for those who are being affected by the mass development of this property, as well as for the conservation of trees important to our health and well-being. We appreciate your kindest regards, Carrie Gray, 21 Cottage Road. Next one is from Lynette Lico, who I believe was on here a little earlier. I understand there is to be a public hearing regarding the request that the town remove 5 large trees at the edge of the former Barton property near the lower town green. I'm pleading with you as the town tree warden, do everything you possibly can to prevent this from happening. Newbury has already lost many of the beautiful mature trees which belong to the public, but often are destroyed in the interest of private party. You, of all concerned, are well aware of the environment, social, and historical worth of these trees. If Newbury wants to hold on to its reputation as a picturesque and aware town, we must honor the values we place on our trees. Thank you for your attention and service to Newbury. Next one is from Irene, Martyniuk. Mr. Lamprey, I'm writing as a concerned taxpayer and resident of the Cottage Road neighborhood. I oppose your proposal to cut down 5 maple trees on Cottage Road. I walk by these trees every day and 4 of the 5 look completely healthy and perhaps could use some trimming. Why are you cutting down perfectly healthy trees? The land next to the trees has lost significant numbers of trees and shrubs already. I'm very concerned about drainage from the development which is coming, and you know trees play a very important role in holding water and preventing flooding. With many shallow wells in the area and septic systems, the loss of so much vegetation which holds water from this property will already affect our neighborhood. Now, when there's even a ½ inch of rain, my property has a moat surrounding it. What will happen when asphalt driveways and large houses affect how water drains from Old Town Hill, all down Cottage to Riverfront East and Riverfront? Will we be compensated if our septic systems fail? That would be something that would have to be taken up either through planning or conservation, I believe. A valued use of my tax dollars is to look at the many dead trees on Cottage Road which need to be removed. Some, but not all, are trustees of the reservation property. Have you approached them about removing these dead trees? Every winter we lose power after a tree or dead limbs on Cottage or High Road comes down on the power lines. What are you doing to take care of this problem? The character of the green in our community will be irrevocably changed by the loss of habitat and open space on Cottage Road. My property values will be affected by the drainage from this development. The water has to go somewhere. I ask you and the selectmen who have copied this letter to not kill these trees and maintain at least a shred of what has already been lost. And Irene lives at 30 Riverfront. As far as the trustees of the reservation land goes, that would be considered private property, and the town would not be able to go and prune back those trees. And there was another thing. Oh, the power lines. Back 2 years ago, National Grid went through the entire town and did prune up trees that were under the power lines, removing anything that was up to, I believe, 6 or 8 inches in diameter that might affect the power line. So that was done throughout the area. I believe it was 2 years ago, everywhere in town. The next one is from Ryan Mitchell. Hello, Mr. Lamprey. I thought I would write to you to express my concern for the trees on the lot that is currently being developed at the corner of Cottage Road and High Road. I live at 275 High Road. For much of my childhood to present day, I could see many of the trees from my bedroom in my house. I have also many memories of walking by them. I'm sure everyone else in my family and many members of the community do as well. I'm a graduate student. My studies are focused on climate change, and many of my classes emphasize the importance of trees for both climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. When classes went virtual, I came back home where I am living now, where I can still see several of the trees from my room. They are beautiful. I hope they will remain in place when the project is finished. Thank you. I hope your summer's been going well. Ryan Mitchell. The point being, Ryan, is that the trees that you're talking about are not part of the development. They are the town trees. So that's why this public hearing was taking place. Next one is from Glenna Etheridge. I'm writing this in response to the notice of a virtual public meeting to be held on July 29th at 7 p.m. with specific reference to the 5 maple trees on Cottage Road, which have been marked. I live nearby and enjoy the many benefits offered by these trees, which have anchored the environment in the area and provide a measure of shade, certainly at least 60 or 70 years each. With a possible exception of the one furthest down Cottage Road away from High Road, they appear to be healthy, so I object strongly to them being removed without definitive knowledge that they have major problems which make them a danger to the public. I do not believe this can be right or in the interest of the entire community to remove such majestic trees simply to appease the short-term interest of a developer or any individual. As tree warden, I would expect your first priority must be to ensure the safety and health of our declining stock of indigenous trees in Newbury. I hope you will support and work to save our local trees rather than eliminate them. Glenna Etheridge at 6 Newman Road. And I believe this is the last one. Nope, this is a repeat of one of the other ones. So that's all of the ones that had been emailed to me. So at this point, I think we can open it up to people who may have questions.
Okay, I am going to go to the first in line, which is Katie McIntosh. There we go.
Hi. Can everyone hear me okay, Mr. Lamb?
Yeah.
Okay, good. My husband and I live at 1 Cottage Road. We caretake the house for the first settlers, the little 350-year-old salt box. We've lived here for about 28 years. And I have a couple of questions. One, Tim, is, are these trees in worse shape, or are they about comparable to some others that are marked on the green? I wondered if there's anything that could be done health-wise that could help them along, or any medicine that could be given to them and trimmed so that they all wouldn't have to come down.
Well, did you see the photographs?
I did see the photographs, but I'm wondering, I also think up on the green there appear to be some trees that look equally as bad, no?
Well, the issue with the green is that we don't know what is, call it more or less, up in the trees, because I don't think there'd been any kind of work done on them. I mean, if a branch broke on this, I think there's one maple up there on the upper green that has a lot of broken branches where weight of snow or ice or whatever caused the branches to break, and those would need to be cut back to, you know, the trunk of the tree to allow the tree to heal over those branches. But the question is, if there's rot in those branches and they go back into the tree, then the rot gets into the center of the tree and you don't see it from the outside of the tree. So the conductive tissue of the tree is just underneath the bark, so to speak. So a tree can have leaves on it and look healthy, but the interior part of it that would make it dangerous, say in the situation of like the upper green where you have children playing and people running and whatever, that was the issue that started the whole thing with the upper and the lower green, was to look at those trees. So there's a lot of that we don't know for sure. And like I said at the beginning of it, there were 2 trees on Cottage that someone had called about it being dangerous because it was dropping branches near where the school bus came and picked the kids up. So that was 3, maybe going on 4 years ago that I went down. And there was one tree that was taken down and another one that is one of the existing trees that's there now that had a large dead limb taken off of it. You can tell it's been cut close to the front of the tree. Right. So it was just a case of, you know, watching those trees for the last 3 or 4 years to see what was going on with them. Some have been in more obvious rapid decline. Others, again, there's holes in the trunks where, you know, poking into them, there's rot in the trees. And so.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, you go ahead.
So in your opinion, it's kind of a done deal that those are all coming down?
Well, at this point,
I'm just wondering if there's anything that can save them, you know?
What's going to save them is what Mass General Law says. It says, Chapter 87, and 87 is, and I think it's 40 something, I can't remember the number, all have to do with shade trees. Chapter 87, Section 4 states, the tree warden shall not cut down or remove or grant a permit for the cutting down or removal of a public shade tree if at or before a public hearing as provided in the preceding section, which talks about having public hearings. Objection in writing is made by one or more persons unless such cutting or removal or permit to cut or remove is approved by the selectman or by the mayor. So I had contacted the town administrator and said, at that point, I had 7 emails about not taking it down. And I had said to the administrator, we're going to need to have this become part of a public hearing with the Board of Selectmen. So as I understand it, that should be scheduled for August 25. So I can't do anything at this point in time. I can't cut trees. I couldn't prune the trees there. I couldn't do anything until after the selectmen's hearing, at which point then it would be the Board of Selectmen that would say, we can cut down this one and this one. You can cut them all down. You can cut none of them down. That decision will be made there. That's just part of what the general law is in Massachusetts. So it's a done deal tonight that tomorrow you're going to see chainsaws out there. It's got to go before the Board of Selectmen for
Right.
their.
And is there any chance of helping them at all, do you think? In your professional opinion, is there any medical thing that could,
I mean,
I'm trying to say preventative measure to help them?
the issue is the age of the trees. As close as I can figure, they're probably 60 to 70 years old.
Yep.
What people find hard to understand is the trees have a lifespan.
Right.
One of the things I tell people is the town of Newbury is blessed to have a lot of old trees.
Yes.
And the town of Newbury is cursed to have a lot of old trees. There's
Right.
a lot of things that have reached their lifespan, and then things like the drought of 2015 and 2016, particularly on white oaks, just pushed them over the edge. By the time 2017 came around, there was, and still are, a lot of dead oak trees in town that we're trying to get to as we know where they are. And if they're, again, when I talked about imminently dangerous on trees, those can come down immediately once we know about them if they're on town property. I looked at some the other day. There was probably 7 or 8 trees. One of them was on town property. The other trees were on the person's property. They were all dead oak trees. And that was just, like I said, from the drought in those 2 years. So to answer your question, I don't know. There are issues with those trees. I don't know that fertilizing them would make a difference, but at this point, the hearing would be with the selectmen on the 25th. I'm guessing it'll be a Zoom meeting like this one, and I will call it be there to answer questions, and maybe there would be a need for, when I was on the zoning board in Salisbury, when I lived there, we would have what they would call a site inspection, where the selectmen or whoever it was in the case of the zoning board would go down and look at a particular area to see what the questions were about a
Right.
particular piece of property in the zoning laws. So.
Right, okay. I just have one other item I wanted to say. I am the neighbor who spoke with Mr. DePiero when he was cutting down foliage on this side on the town side of the stone wall. And when he told me he definitely could do that without a problem. That was his right to be able to do that. But he did not just remove poison ivy. There were tons of natural native shrubs, small saplings that were coming up really nicely, and lots of beach roses. And I know that if somebody removes something from town property without permission, that they are expected to replant. And it looks kind of odd if you go down Cottage Road right now to see where he stopped, and you can see all the natural plantings, and the roses didn't go down that far because it's shadier down there, but tons of natural habitat was taken down that was on the town property. I'd like to see him replace some of that and put the buffer back. I mean, he told me it was more important for the people that were going to be living there to see the stone wall than to see the foliage. And that's a little short-sighted, I think.
Okay, that would be something, if you attend the selectmen's hearing, that you could bring up
Okay.
and see what their feeling is on that.
Is that something that the town, I know in other areas in Massachusetts, if something comes down that shouldn't have come down, it's up to the person who took it down to replace it. Is that something that is
I
in
would
your
look at the
purvey?
general laws on that
Mm,
and what Mass General Law says on that,
mm,
about whether the person would have to replant the plants that were there.
yeah, I mean, these were natural habitat type plants. As I said, beach roses, little beach plums that were down there. I thought that would be more in the town's interest to keep natural stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. Well, like I said, I would bring that up at the selectmen's meeting.
Okay,
And in the meantime, I've got some time to research that to find out what.
thank you. Thank you very much. Yep.
Okay, I have next up a Brent Mitchell.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Tim, I have two questions, and maybe we'll take them in turn. And it relates a bit to what Katie just said. We've been talking about tree removal. What is the process for the town to replace trees or to plant trees? Either the town doing it or concerned citizens being allowed to replace trees?
Okay. What happens there is some funding. For instance, on the Upper Green, there was some money left to the town for planting trees on the Upper Green. So if we look at trees up on the Upper Green, for instance, and those trees, ones that need to be replaced, then we can use some of that funds to buy trees and replant them. Let's say in the case of these trees on Cottage Road, let's say that they are to the point where they need to be
Tim, your audio is cutting out a little bit.
okay, that's probably me trying to stop and think what exactly how I want to phrase what I want to say.
Sure.
People have planted trees, say along the edge of the right of way. Someone says, "Oh, it would look really pretty to have a crabapple right out there." Well, in order to do that, they have to get permission of the tree warden, and then those trees that were planted on town property, even though somebody else put it in there and maybe paid for it, then they become town trees to maintain. So it's just a case of soil conditions, sun, shade. We did come up with a list of trees for the Upper Green, native trees that could replace the sugar maples that are there if any of the sugar maples have to come down. So to answer the question, yes, there doesn't appear to be funding for specific streets if somebody decided they wanted to put something in on the public right of way. It would probably have to be a consultation between me and the highway department as to make sure that, okay, these trees are not going to get to be big. I've seen in numerous towns where trees are planted under the power lines. I look at the trees and go, okay, 60, 70 feet. Those trees are going to be cut by National Grid to keep them from interfering with the wires. So it's sometimes a case of trying to match up the tree with the location, but if it was on the public right of way, then I think it would be best to have a collaborative effort between someone who might want to donate a tree, so to speak, and whether or not it's going to be an issue, say like plowing snow, is it going to be in a spot where snow plow is going to hit that and damage the tree? And then again, what type of tree? Probably better off with natives in the long run than trying to plant, say like something that's a short-lived type of tree.
Great, thanks. And my second question is just one about timing of all of this. You had mentioned that you looked at these trees 3 or 4 years ago, and why are we back to them now? Can you clarify whether that was at a specific request from any party?
Well, Mr. DePiero did contact me and say he had concerns about the trees that were there, and could I come down and take a look at them? So I did go down and take a look at them. And as I said earlier, I asked Mr. DePiero for permission to go onto the inside of the property because it's posted no trespassing. And he gave me permission to go in there, and the photos that I took show where what you see from the front looks good, but from what you see in the back, it's not as good. And there's one that's closest to, call it the driveway, that he's opened up that definitely is in real sad shape. And then there's another one further down that it actually has what would have been like a trunk coming up and then two branches on the maple, and then the two branches started to grow together and they formed one trunk but made up of two sections. And one of those, it's one part is very much dead, and then from the front it doesn't look as bad, but when you get around the back side of it, it's the decay and the rot is starting to go into the other tree. And my worry and concern on trees like that is, you know, when you get an ice storm or when you get call it straight line winds or whatever it would happen to be, having that come down, and if you look at all those trees, they are near the power lines, and that would take the power out for everybody on the rest of the way down Cottage Road. So it's just a case of looking at the trees and saying, you know, is it time? And like I said, unfortunately, for many years, what the town had in the budget for care of trees was $5,000 a year. Well, at $2,000 a tree doesn't allow a lot of money to go into it. Now we're getting more money for doing things. And for instance, like on the upper green, we got lime on it this year. We got gypsum on it to help loosen up that packed soil. Same thing with down on the lower green, lime and gypsum to help loosen up that soil to make it easier for the trees to grow. So started with the public areas. It would be, I think, cost prohibitive if we went down each street and said, gee, that tree, you know, could be fertilized and it might do a little bit better, or it needs to be sprayed. So in those cases, the pruning aspect of it is what I would like to do in town, quite honestly, is pick some streets in town that have X number of trees that have problems, whether they need to be pruned up or need to be removal, mark all the trees on a particular street, and then have the public hearing and say, okay, this is what we want to do. The ones with the blue marks on them would be pruned. The ones with the orange marks on them would be removed. Get rid of the hazardous trees that are there, and then prune up the ones that maybe have bad branches, which over time would lead to the rot going into the tree completely, and then eventually that tree having to be taken down. In a lot of cases, the pruning up would prevent that on healthy trees, but that's the whole idea of trying to do it. It'd take a number of years to catch up on getting that all done, but that's the plan anyway. You know, it started up on Larkin Road, which is where one of the well sites are, and there were a bunch of trees along there that when I first went down to look at a particular tree that someone had an issue with, then I saw there were dozens of trees along Larkin that needed to come down. We had the public hearings, we got them removed. And we're still working just on that one street, trying to get trees pruned up and identifying trees that have major problems that need to come down. So that's the ongoing process there.
Great, thank you. And I just, in closing, I hope we can at minimum replace as many as we take out through whatever means. And I can imagine, just seeing heads nodding now, that people would participate in trying to make that happen, even if we have to get creative.
Okay.
Okay, we have next Jessica Brown.
Thanks. Yeah, well, I will build on and follow on what several people have said, including my husband, Brent Mitchell, just now. Not only that we would hope to participate in replanting trees, but to begin with trying to save those trees that are healthy enough to be saved. And what I have heard in your remarks is that pruning and some care and some investment of resources might be enough for some of these individual trees. And I think the 18 emails is an indication of the passion that people feel here about these trees in this moment. Not only when so much of the heritage landscape of our town is being changed, not only here, but we know what's happening further up on High Road in several spots, but also for the function that they have for us living in this neighborhood. Irene has articulated, she's not on the call anymore, Irene Ratunik, what it means for the aquifer, for drainage, for flooding. We are seeing it here as this construction unfolds in terms of loose topsoil already on the private land, which I know is of no concern to the town, but our house is covered with dust on a regular basis, and as are the homes of other people in this neighborhood. So these few trees are very important, and new saplings or that might be planted will take years to fill in the function. So I see the work that is going on to try to protect and ensure the health and revive trees elsewhere in the community. And I do not understand why such an effort would not be made here. So that's a statement. Sorry, it was long. A question would be acknowledging your tremendous expertise in this area and the research you've done to look at the trees on his property recently. What is in advance of the hearing, what are the options for securing a second opinion on the trees to help guide the selectmen in their decision? This is a very important issue for this neighborhood, as you've heard.
Well, I don't know whether there is, I'm going to say funding, but I don't know. Ultimately, what Mass General Law says is the tree warden in a town is the person who makes the decisions on public trees. Whether the Board of Selectmen would want to have someone else come in, an independent tree service, pay them to come in and look at the trees and see what they think, and get a report for the selectmen. I can run that by the town administrator tomorrow and say, this is what came up with the hearing. In some cases, I think people feel that I'm someone who has gone insane with wanting to get trees cut down in town. And trust me, there are a lot more trees in town that need to come down, that if I took people on rides through certain streets that people might not go on and show them the trees that, need to come down. And, the budget for the tree warden is $50,000. And if we had to go out because the town's bucket truck couldn't keep up with the demand, putting those trees out to bid, so to speak, to have independent tree services come take them down. We would probably be able to get somewhere between 20 and 25 trees a year taken down. Where the need right now is there's probably hundreds of trees that need to come down. If you just drive around and look for the dead trees that are closest to the road, if you went down go down Orchard Street. You know what Orchard Street is in town? Go down Orchard Street and start looking, and see what the trees are. You can go, like I said, on any of these old roads, you know, with a lot of trees on them. Boston Road, you'll see a lot of them that are close to the street. Generally speaking, 10 to 15 feet off the edge of the road is, call it town property. And you see the number of trees that are there. A lot of times the stone walls were built on property lines between private property and town property. So the things that are on the street side of the stone walls are generally considered to be town trees. And if you drive around and look, you'll see that there are tremendous numbers of trees that need to be taken care of. And it's
So given that limited budget, why would you take down trees on Cottage Road that several of which appear extremely healthy?
Well,
And I guess this is where I think we really do need a second opinion. And if budget is an issue, I suspect there are enough people in the neighborhood who would help to defray the costs of getting someone who could look and propose solutions to save at least some of these trees.
well, like I said, I will contact the town administrator. What's today? Today is Wednesday.
29th.
No, I'm thinking days of the week because it's generally Friday's town hall is closed. So I can contact her tomorrow and say, okay, this is what people are proposing. And then I don't know if she can poll the board to see what their feelings are on that. But either way, it's going to be, nothing's going to happen to the trees on Cottage Road between now and the selectmen's meeting at all. Nothing will happen.
Right, but we'd like to go into that meeting, I think, with maybe more detailed information about the options. We have had our share of experiences with Board of Selectmen meeting where we were given very short timeframes for any action. And in this moment, where you're describing a limited budget for tree removal, why these trees would be prioritized, I think is really confusing to many of us.
Well, part of it is if trees come down and block Cottage Road, how else do you get out?
We've lived here 25 years and never seen this concern be raised. It's just a very interesting timing.
Well, as I said, I started first looking at those trees 3-4 years ago.
Right.
There was one that came down, and one that, if you look at it, it might be the second or third one in, but the side that faces Cottage Road, you can see where that was cut flush, and the trees that had, at that point, we didn't have the tree truck in town, so it had to go out to bid. And it was either one or two of the people who came to look at the tree, the two trees, said, you're going to have to keep an eye on those as well because, you know, of holes in the trunks and things like that. So, you know, it's been watchful, observant of them for the last 3 years. And then just then getting into looking at, you know, both sides of the trees. What, as I said earlier, what you see on both sides of the trees is what makes the determination. There are two of them that are very dangerous that would not take much more than a severe thunderstorm coming through, or if it goes on long enough to go into the winter, an ice storm, that those trees are coming down. Mother Nature will take care of that. But like I said, I will check with Tracy tomorrow morning and see if we could get somebody to come and take a look. I could meet with whomever that would be, and
Thank you.
I would have to get permission from Mr. DePiro again to go onto the property because it's posted. And if it's posted, I can't, as tree warden, go onto private property to do stuff. But as far as getting that permission to get the photographs on, call it on the inside of the stone wall of what was there, he was cooperative in doing that. So I'll run that by the town administrator, and see if there is a way of getting someone else to come and take a look at it. Possibly I could get another tree service to come in and take a look at it and see what their opinion is.
Thank you, Tim.
Hi,
It would be great if that person could bring a perspective of what might be done to save them too. The ones that, not the 2 that are so bad, but the 3 that might have a chance. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to Dan Wellahan next.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Dan Willian and I'm at 38 Cottage Road. I was wondering, as we look at the photos of those trees, there were a couple of knot holes, and then the assumption that there's rot inside. And on some you can see the rot from the outside, like one of, is sort of obscured by vines. But you were saying that you can see rot on some of them. My question is, if it's hard to see on the outside, have core samples been done on any of the trees? If so, how many of the trees, how many core samples?
None.
Okay. Is that part of our toolkit? Do we have a tree core?
Not that I know of.
Okay. I was just wondering, because that could give you a pretty non-invasive look at how healthy the tree is on the inside.
Yeah. Well, if we get someone to come up with, call it a second opinion, it most likely would be a tree service that could do that, and they might have the tools to do that. It's just something that you would be, in 4 years, the first person who's ever asked me about doing core samples on a tree. So
I do them with my students in science class. So
okay. Anything else?
no, that is it. Thank you.
Okay.
Did Joy have a question? No. Okay, I'm going to go to Michelle.
So first of all, Tim, I just wanted to say that I feel for you, because I feel a little bit like you've become a pawn in a battle that's going on in our neighborhood. Mark DePiero basically has told some of us that, quote unquote, he will do whatever he wants to do, and that we can fight him, but it doesn't matter because he's going to get to do whatever he wants to do, his way of putting it. I can show you video that I took of that stretch of stone wall in December, and all of the cherry trees, beach plum trees, viburnums. There were tons of plants on the other side of that stone wall that they ripped out, not just vines, not just poison ivy. So I can show you evidence that he took out a lot of stuff along there. But he took out trees when he developed Newman Road along the side of the stone walls up along Newman Road. He cut down 100-year-old trees just over the property line in Newburyport, got a cease and desist, and it involved a lawsuit with the abutter there for trees that he took down that he didn't have any right to take down. So he's kind of got a theme going on here. And I think that he wants those trees down, and he wants to make sure that the neighborhood understands that he's going to get those trees down, and that he's basically using you and the town to do it. And I will tell you right now that there are people in Newbury who have said to me and said to my neighbors, you're never going to get anywhere with this because Mark DePiero has the town of Newbury in his pocket. He has the town offices in his pocket. He has the selectmen in his pocket. And I don't actually believe that, but the optics are not good with this. So if those trees really and truly are that rotted and they really and truly need to come down, I understand that. If the trees are really sick, the trees are really sick. But the timing is terrible on this. And I, for one, am really not going to feel comfortable unless there's some sort of objective third-party arborist who says, we've looked at these trees and they're not salvageable. There's nothing we can do to treat them to keep them going. There's another fully mature silver maple in Joy Michaud's yard that's considerably bigger than these trees, that's very healthy. There's a large silver maple further down at the very, very end of Cottage Road, right on the road, that's also very healthy. And these trees, if they're healthy, I'm not saying that the trees that are slated to come down have been treated well. They've been neglected, and like everything else in this situation, they've been neglected, and now we're paying for it. But theoretically, those trees could live 130 years if they were treated well. Now, they haven't been treated well, but maybe they don't have to come down yet. I'm going to need to know that there's nothing we can do to keep them. And so my interest is knowing what kind of an appeal process do we have if the town says, oh, well, we still think they need to come down. For my comfort, because of the way this whole situation has gone, I'm going to need somebody other than the town of Newbury to say, yes, the town is right. These really are beyond saving. There's nothing we can do to trim them or treat them or repair them so that they are safe. Right now, I mean, I agree with you, lots of branches have come down, but they're not overhanging the road. They're not in the roadway. They're not next to the bus stop anymore. I mean, yes, they could come down in the power lines, maybe that's true, but I just can't believe at this point, given what I've been through, that this isn't because Mark DePiro said these trees need to go. And I don't say that, I'm not impugning anything on you. I think you've been stuck in the middle of something that you did not choose to be stuck in the middle of. But I'm just saying, for the well-being of this neighborhood, for the peace of mind of this neighborhood, we're going to need to know that someone, an objective third-party arborist, looked at this and said, yeah, there's really nothing we can do here.
The previous person had asked me about getting, call it a second opinion. And I said that I will call the town administrator tomorrow and ask about doing that.
Okay.
To an independent, call it third party to look at the trees. I would go with the person and say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. What do you think? And as I said, it was either 3 or 4 years ago when there were 7 trees along that section of the road. And I don't honestly remember if it was 1 or 2 trees they had to take down that were closer to High Road, because they were near where the normal bus stop is, and that's what brought the whole call to come and take a look at it, was because branches were raining down where the kids would be waiting for the buses. So it was either 1 or 2 trees that came down, and then, if I remember, trying to remember looking at the trees, I think it's either the second or third one in to the left going down Cottage Road, where you can see where a fairly good sized limb was pruned back up close to the tree. And at that time, the town didn't have the tree truck, so we had to use outside vendors. And again, I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 of the vendors who were looking at the tree said, you're going to have to keep an eye on those other trees. There's issues developing with them, meaning the other 5 trees that go down along that section of road. We didn't get further down the road to look at them. So, like I said, I'll make a call to the town administrator tomorrow and say, this is what people have brought up at the hearing, and they would like to get a second opinion. And, we've got time to get that done. We've got, 25 days roughly to get someone to come take a look at the trees and say, yeah, this one is salvageable, none of them are salvageable, and then get a written report from an independent arborist who can look at the trees, and I can just point out to them, this is what I'm seeing, what do you think? And do
One
that.
last question.
Yeah.
if these trees were valuable to the town for some reason, if this was a tree they'd signed the Declaration of Independence under or whatever, of course it wouldn't have been a silver maple because it would be long dead by now. But if these trees had some sort of significant import to the town, are they so far gone at this point that they wouldn't be salvageable? Or is it just a case that they're not valuable enough to enough people in the town that they're not worth saving?
I always look at it from the safety aspect of what can go wrong with that tree. The one closest to where the driveway is opened up now into Mr. DePiro's property is well on its way out. There's another one that is further down. Again, I don't remember if it's the second or the third one down, where it was a tree that started many years ago. I don't know if somebody specifically planted them or Mother Nature did. Silver maples were popular for a number of years, but they've gone out of favor because they're not as long-lived as some of the other maple trees. But I think it was a tree that had a trunk that came up, and then there was another branch that came out off the side, which at the planting time, if they were planted, should have been removed. But now it has formed, call it a double trunk. And as you're looking at it from the outside of Cottage Road, it would be the part that's on the left, which is a stump coming down this way. But if you look at the rest of the tree from the front, it looks fine. But when you go around to the back of it, it's not so fine. It's that part is into the bark and working its way in and rotting the rest of the trunk of that tree. So that's what I saw. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't gotten permission to go in on the other side of the trees to take a look at them. And that's what I based it on for me, looking at those trees that, yes, 3 years, maybe 4 years ago, they were having issues. And now they seem to have more issues. But I'm not against having someone else to come in and take a look at them, form an opinion on which, if all or none or 2 or 3 of them need to come down, and submit that to the Board of Selectmen for that hearing on the 25th. And ultimately, they need to make the decision on it. It's out of my hands right now. If I wanted to have those trees cut down now, hire somebody to do it, have the town do it, I can't do it. It's just that section of state law general law, I should say, that I read. It's up to the selectmen now to make the final decision on what comes down. So, like I said, I will check with the town administrator tomorrow and say, this is the concerns that I've heard at the meeting. And, can we address this by getting, an outside, call it arborist, to come in and take a look.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay, I am going to move on to Nathan Gray.
Hi, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. Nathan Gray, 21 Cottage Road. Thank you. I definitely echo everyone else's concerns about the trees and not wanting them to come down. Going to try to stick to other points though, because I'm one of the last speakers. A lot of stuff has already been said. Just want to make a comment on the tree coming down on the road. As a neighborhood, I know at least 3 people that own tractors here, as well as 5 or 6 able bodies that would come out and use chainsaws, and including myself that works from home most of the time, and be able to clear that road probably faster than the town could if there was some kind of emergency. Plus, we do have another exit as well on Riverfront Road, so I just don't see that as a concern. The bus stop, children being underneath the trees, maybe in the meantime we can move that into the turnaround point, make sure there's no kids under there. Of course, the imminent danger of a tree falling on a child is not something that any of us want to be responsible for. So if they are going to be meeting there when the fall session opens up, if the trees are still there, then let's make sure we address that as well. And the tree company, sounded as if you were going to, for your second opinion, reach out to another tree cutting company. Is it a tree cutting company, or would you reach out more to like an expert arborist?
Just for a minute, there are tree cutters, people who this is what they do for a living. Oh, that tree's got to come down.
Yeah, thank
Then
you for
people who
understanding.
services that have mass certified arborists.
Okay.
And a certified arborist, they can lose their certification if they are not honest in their assessment of what a tree needs. And so that's the direction that I would reach out to, is finding mass certified arborists, have them come and take a look at the trees. Again, show them what I'm seeing and say, okay, now you look at it, you tell me what you think.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying on that. And then I think just my final point is, if it's not, if there's no imminent danger, imminent threat of it falling, of course, someone walking by, the chances of that and such, and maybe signs could be put out there. But if it's not a liability to the town, as you said, there's hundreds of trees that need to be cut down.
Let me interrupt you for just a second so I can make a point for you.
Go ahead.
The town knows that a tree is imminently dangerous and a limb falls on somebody who's walking, the town is in big trouble. So that's the fine line you walk with, branches falling or anything like that.
Yep. And I just would like to repeat what you said about the other trees as well, the other 100 trees that you said that need to come down. But yeah, I understand that. So the safety part, that is a big concern, of course, and that's a high stakes to play with someone's life. But I don't see, in my opinion, keeping a tree there that is going to die and let it naturally come down, it's going to house a lot of animals. I've seen a lot of sugar gliders around here recently, and they live in the dead trees and owls and such things like that. So I'd like to see it stay, of course. And I think all the other points have been hit here. So it's getting late. I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, let's see here. I am going to go to Katie McIntosh.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up because I didn't keep it in my head what might happen regarding Mr. DePiero removing all of the saplings and roses and whatever on this side of the road, native bushes. How do we proceed with that was done illegally? Who at the town would handle trying to figure out how to get those replanted?
I don't know. I would have to look into that and see. I would have to research Mass General Law, and then once I have an idea on that, I would have to present that to what the general law says, and then if the general law says that it would have to be redone, then it would be referred to town council. But I'm in an area that I know nothing about as far as someone call it
Right.
cutting stuff and whether they would have to replace it. I'm just writing down some notes here so I don't forget what things I want to send off to the town administrator. So I will check on that. I will check on.
Thank you. It was the last screen of shrubbery, bushes, natural habitat that kept all the dust from the construction site from coming all over our cars every day and in our windows every day. It would have been nice, I wasn't sure how to do it, to ask that he keep the ground wet so that we weren't inhaling for weeks all of the dust, especially when all of that barrier, that natural barrier came down. It was just like a dust storm over here. So
I would think that might be something that you could contact the planning board on. I don't know for sure.
okay.
If there was a permit issued for doing, removal and, whatever the Conservation Commission said.
Right.
There's nothing that I could do as tree warden, but there might be something, say, planning board could do, depending, I have no idea what the development that was there came in under for, say, the planning board.
Okay. All right, right.
That, I don't know. You know,
Right.
I understand.
right. Maybe conservation. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and just point of information on that, Tim, quickly. We're having to invest in a heat pump so that we can close our windows. That's how bad it is.
Mhm.
Okay, I have another hand up by Jessica Brown.
Sorry, just to follow, a clarification because I called town hall about this and spoke at the suggestion of the planner with the building inspector about the dust early on. There were times where the plume of dust was literally 2 stories high as trees came down, and I watched neighbor kids, if we're concerned about kids in the neighborhood, having to cover their nose and mouth with scarves and shirts as they walked by or rode by on their bicycles. And if trees, the screen that Katie mentions has been very important on that part of Cottage Road. These large trees play a really important role as well. My phone call to the building inspector, he told me he would speak with the landowner and ask him to take measures. We have seen no measures taken. I think you can understand our frustration.
Well, I understand that. It's just, I'm trying to address the issues that
Yeah,
have to do.
different issue.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's important, I think, you know, this is the backdrop against which there are concerns about trees coming down.
Understood.
It appears we are through with the comments, Tim.
Okay. So just to reiterate, because of how this falls under Chapter 87, I believe it's sections 3 and 4. 3 talks about having the public hearing, and 4 says that if there's objections to the cutting of trees, then it gets referred to the Board of Selectmen. What I'm going to do is look into the general law about, you know, cutting and removal of stuff outside the stone wall and see what the regulations are on that, and then look into a second opinion for call it the health of the trees that are there. And that being able to get somebody to come up with a second opinion should be reasonably quick to do, finding a mass certified arborist who could come in and take a look at it. But again, I would run that by the town administrator on both issues, and I will send emails off to her tomorrow morning.
Do you want to take any more questions, Tim?
If there's something different than what has already been said, then yes. If it's, call it a reiteration of what we've already talked about. I mean, are there more people waiting to talk?
We've just had a couple of more hands raised. So Michelle is saying she has something new. I will give her the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't a question, it's actually a clarification. While we were talking, I looked at the video that I had of the wall along there from December, and there is brush there, but none of it is very large caliber. I don't think any of the trunks that are on the roadside part of the wall were probably bigger than the width of a thumb.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that I was under the impression that there were some actually larger trees that were on this side of the stone wall. And when I go back and I look at the video, the larger caliber stuff was on the other side of the wall. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. That's kind of what I remembered from when I had been there previously. I didn't remember any larger size brushy trees, and if there were, then as far as maintaining the road so that things aren't crowding in on the road, highway probably would have pruned stuff back just to keep that from happening.
My memory of it is when it's all leafed out, and I thought it was on the side of the street side of the stone wall, but the video I have is from December. So
Yeah,
all the leaves are gone, so I'm just looking at trunks.
yeah,
And all of the trunks on the street side of the road are small caliber. I mean, like very small caliber.
all
Sad.
right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Brent, do you have something new?
Well, just in your summary, Tim, you didn't address the question of replacing the trees that would be cut down or that have been cut down.
Well, that would be an issue of funding for that. You know, stumps would have to be ground out, and then trees would have to be planted as close to the stone wall as possible, because, you know, if you get I'm not exactly sure what the footage is from the edge of the road to the stone wall, but if you say move a tree out closer to the road, is there going to be an impact from snow plowing? Is it going to take and then put those trees directly under the power lines, which if they're under the power lines or close to it, National Grid does roughly every 5 years where they come into town and prune back trees that are in danger to the power lines. They have that right to do that under Mass General Law. So it'd be a case of, you know, can we safely put something in there that A, won't interfere with plowing of snow, that won't interfere with what would ultimately happen to them with National Grid having to prune them. If you look at where those trees are now, they are far enough off the road that the way they grow, somewhere along the line, I would gather that those trees were pruned to, you know, keep the limbs from getting into the primary lines. So if they were normal maples, they would, you know, have branches all the way down to the ground. So I think somewhere along the line they were pruned back. But as far as replacing them, we would have to look at, you know, is there room? Can we do it safely so that ultimately the trees aren't going to be really distorted by pruning?
So is there a process or a next step for pursuing that?
I'll have to look into that, mainly looking into it from the perspective of what I just talked about, to see, okay, what can we put in there that isn't going to be a problem in both directions, so that, you know, we don't put money into planting trees and then a few years down the road, they're not very good looking trees anymore. The stone wall and the closeness to the stone wall is, I think, where the issue is going to come in immediately in my mind. You know, digging a hole to put a tree in there, and, you know, having it grow. You know, you don't build a small doghouse for a St. Bernard puppy. You know, you try and look at, okay, what's the ultimate height of the tree going to be? What's the ultimate width of the tree is going to be? And can it be done so that the trees can grow properly? You know, it just would depend on what we can do on that. There may be some funding that the town has for replacement trees. I'll have to look into that because I don't know. I know, as I said, that there was money left for the upper green for replacement of trees on the upper green, but that was just for planting trees on the upper green, as I understand it.
Okay. All right. I think that we are clear of questions.
Okay, if that's the case, then at this point, I will adjourn the meeting And thank everyone for their participation tonight and for helping me come up with a better understanding of what the neighbors want and looking at what things that we might be able to do as far as evaluating the trees to see if there are some that can stay and some that definitely should come down.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and for listening to us.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.